Rob, you're muted.
Doug Dean will join us here in just a minute from Birmingham. We got Ronnie and Hoover, Carson way on the plains in Auburn, executive producer Brendan Martin in Ocala, Florida. I'm in Memphis, Rob Browne. I had a friend of mine who knows Auburn really well texted me a couple of nights ago, and he goes, man, have I got some split to tell you about Auburn? He goes, in fact, they say Auburn is one bearded lady short of a full-blown circus. Now, all that being said, Auburn's been here before, Ronnie and Carson, where when it starts falling apart, it's like catching a falling chandelier. It's hard to fix it, but the roster's better. Number 11 in the country. I think Florida's 8 or 9, Bama's 2, and Georgia's 1. Ohio State's 3. Watching Auburn play offense is like animal husbandry. It's horrible. And it's just tough to watch because you've got talent and you almost think, like I said last year, is Hugh Freeze trying to curry favor with the receiving core, of Bryce Kane, Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, and Malcolm Simmons to keep them from hitting the portal button and ignoring the running game. Well, here we go again. You got Jeremiah Cobb. You got Damari Austin. Darrell Robinson's hurt. You got some running backs, but there's no production. You played on the road against 2 top 10 teams. You lost them both on one-possession games. I'll start with you, Ronnie. Is this fixable?
It is, but it's hard to do midseason. I mean, this far in, I mean, you would hope you know what your identity is now, and I'm not sure that they have any idea what their identity is. I mean, you clearly have better players than you've had in years. It's just not working on offense, and I'm not really sure why. I mean, when you hand the ball to the backs 8 total times during the game, and 4 or 5 of those are on 3rd and long, and you're just trying to punt the ball, that's not really a commitment to the run. I think Jackson Arnold had 15 runs, but I mean, that's not. I'm not sure how many of those were actually really runs. So I think you've got to commit to running the ball, and whatever that looks like, you've got to find 3-4 things that work for you, because right now nothing's working for you. Of course, you got to try to run the ball first.
Yeah, I'm not an audiologist or an ear, nose, and throat doctor, but I don't know. I think it'd be a good idea if they would check the hearing of Xavier Chaplin. I heard Hugh Freeze coming off the field Saturday on the Auburn Network when Brett Edens, Ronnie wasn't there. Brett Edens was the lucky man to be the sideline reporter. And he asked him, and Hugh Freeze said, I don't know if he can hear. Well, we know it's loud at A&M.
It's loud everywhere, though, Rob. I mean, how about
exactly?
It's loud everywhere. How about going on a silent count? I mean, everybody else in the country does that. Why not try that?
Yeah, and it was like, well, you got 107,000 people there. You got those cheerleaders on the sidelines, which I digress. But Carson, what are your takeaways from? I don't know the cheers. I don't know them. They've got incredible spirit and a lot of traditions, but. What were your takeaways from Saturday when, you watched it and, my sympathies?
Well, yeah, say the least. I mean, Chaplin especially has been very disappointing this year. You get him from Virginia Tech junior. You got Mason Murphy, a senior from USC, and they both allowed combined 11 pressures and 2 sacks last week. That's just not acceptable, especially for those guys that are that experienced, have had time to really get to know the offense with Jackson Arnold. It's just not acceptable. And I believe they had 10 penalties last week, 5 of which were pre-snap penalties. That's just, you're going to be set back behind the chains every time. And that also kind of answers to why the running game has struggled, is because you're caught behind the line of scrimmage, 1st and 15, all of a sudden it's 3rd and 12. I mean, that's just not going to win football games, no matter how good your defense is.
Yeah. Well, I was watching on the color TV at a wedding Saturday night, guys. Alabama's at Georgia, loud environment, I mean, just raucous. It's insane. I think Alabama had 2 penalties or 1 penalty in terms of false starts or anything like that. Ronnie, It is. It's who you by the fourth and fifth game of the season, you are who you are. That's why I didn't drink the LSU Kool-Aid, and I'm still not drinking it. But I sure thought Florida would win 10. I thought Auburn could win 10. But I feel like an idiot.
I thought Auburn would. I picked Auburn to win 9.
Yeah.
I thought they would win, 8 to 10. I didn't see anything below. I mean, I thought, okay, if you have you had some bad breaks, maybe 7 and 5. I didn't expect this. It's not with the players that they have, with the money they've spent on the roster, and on and on. I mean, I just know that on the staffs that I've been a part of, you had Joe Wickline, you had Rick Trickett. I mean, somebody was yelling in the headset, "Why don't you run the damn ball? Hey Terry, run the ball. Hey Larry, run the ball." And on and on. And so I'm not sure who's yelling on the headset at Auburn, "Run the ball." But apparently they need somebody else to get louder, because I just I'm not sure how you win games doing what he's doing on offense. And he's a smart guy. He's a great coach. But clearly it's not working.
Well, I mean, Hugh Freeze, he had a losing record in SEC games at Ole Miss. He had the 2 good years, 14 and 15. And that's pretty much the high mark of his career. He won some games at Liberty, and everybody thought, well, at Auburn, with unlimited resources, incredible recruiting, fertile recruiting grounds within, 250, 300 miles of campus. That's obvious. And NIL, Auburn, people say, was Auburn late to the party? Hell, I don't know. But the 12th winningest program in the history of college football, 9 recognized now national championships. You should win 7 or 8 games, guys, by default.
Well, I think if you look around, and Auburn's in a drought and everything's cyclical. But I mean, in what world have Ole Miss and Missouri have turned into Auburn and Florida? And I don't, and Auburn and Florida have turned into, Missouri and Ole Miss. I mean, it's just,
yeah.
I am just, and look, you've got to give those places credit. They've done a great job. They're committed. But if you can win 10 games consistently, which they've done the last few years, at Missouri and at Ole Miss, then there's no reason you can't do that at Auburn and Florida. Now, Florida's had a really tough schedule. Auburn historically has a really tough schedule. Still has a tough schedule. It's easier than it's been in quite a while. But again, there are no easy schedules outside of Texas in the SEC. Yeah.
And, Carson, interesting thing. I heard a national show yesterday, and an Arkansas, guy that's a beat writer for him was saying, we don't expect at Arkansas to compete with the Alabamas and Georgias and LSUs, but we certainly can compete with the South Carolinas and the Mississippi States and the Kentuckys and the Auburns. Auburn's in that conversation now. That is just unacceptable when you consider Auburn and the tradition. But in the last 6 years, Auburn's lost to South Carolina twice. That hadn't happened since 1933 that they'd lost to South Carolina. It's not an annual opponent, but unacceptable. Mm-hmm. Never lost to Vanderbilt in history in Auburn. Lost to them last year. From 1955 to 2008, 14 times Auburn beat Vanderbilt. 2008, they lost when Tony Franklin was offensive coordinator. I remember telling my kids at the game, look out there. Somebody's going to lose their job before the bus cranks up. Tony Franklin was terminated before they made it across the state line. Well, they flew back. But you sit there and you look at Ole Miss has never beaten Auburn twice in a row. They did it in 22 and 23. The list of these just first-time evers, your history, Carson. Did you grow up an Auburn fan?
No, actually. So I'm from New York. So I grew up a Boston College fan. My parents are both alumni from there. So
yeah.
Not really accustomed to college football success, to say the least, outside of Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like as a kid growing up, you always thought that Auburn maybe wasn't always going to beat Alabama, but you always had the feeling that they're always going to be a dark horse contender. Like they could always compete at the highest levels. They're well coached. Now it's like, well, they have the good team. Are they well coached? No. In all honesty, they clearly, right now, they're not disciplined. I mean, when you give up 10 penalties every game basically, and you can't capitalize and are always behind the chains, yeah, you're just not going to win. And I think that's Freeze's issue, is really just the play calling has been questionable to say the least. They've only run the ball 20 times against the SEC opponents with their running backs. They should lean into it more. I mean, that opens up the passing game.
Yeah.
Well, it's like we were talking to, we had Ellis, did a show with Ellis Johnson yesterday, which we do every week. And I just asked Ellis, yesterday, as a defensive coordinator, tell me if I'm wrong, but, I mean, he's been doing it longer than I have. But I mean, if you don't at least try to run the damn ball, and the defense is going to line up and tee off on you. And he said, absolutely. He said, that's what I'm going to do. And he said, you've got to stick with it. If you're starting off in the first quarter, and even if you pop a 20-yard run and you still can't do any more than that, he said, that sticks with the defensive coordinator. He knows you can do it. And so he's going to back off. He's like, but if you can't run the ball at all and you're not even trying, they're going to tee off on you. You've got to at least make them respect the run a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Doug, just looking at this, and I mean, everybody, fire, freeze, whatever. I think it's too expensive to do it. Doug, from a corporate standpoint, you're in that world. I'm almost like, do you know what it would cost? It would be $50 million plus to get rid of somebody, pay off people, bring in new people, and then you got to tack on the $21.5 million house settlement. From your leadership position, and you're one of the smartest people I know, great with the pen, what would you recommend doing? Because you're in contact with 20,000 plus people 3 or 4 times a week who absolutely love Auburn.
Well, first of all, good to see you guys. I think I've missed a show or two, and Carson, meet you, if that's how we say it. And you seem well spoken. I'm a Boston. I grew up Catholic. So did Rob, I think.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of love for Boston College, and I bet even as young as you are, the special quarterbacks who wore the number 22. Is that fair, Carson?
More or less.
Yeah, Mr. Flutie.
Anyway, I appreciate you covering Auburn, and you're getting a great mentoring and opportunity at a site like Ronnie's and all those cats. They do a great job. As I was listening to you guys, Rob, I couldn't help but think of the line, but other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
Yeah.
And man, I mean, we hadn't had our brains blown out yet, but what was not on my proverbial bingo card, and I'll get to your actual question in a second, Rob. It's easy for fans sitting in the comfort of their mom's basement in front of a keyboard or in a posh corporate corner office, wherever they are, or announcing their retirement as president and chairman of Osmos pressure treated pine. But I mean, that whole continuum of fandom, I'll get to that in a second. The hard thing is, I think we're in a moment in college football in which it's at least debatable, notwithstanding the great Dave Bartu and his college football matrix quant work, which is really cool. And he's a big John Summerall. The computer spits out Tulane's John Summerall. And I do see some, if Freeze ends up vacating the position one way or the other, I don't think it's in the next little while. I think even if he loses competitive games to Georgia and possibly even Mizzou, it's not as straightforward a decision saying we're better off with an interim coach and virtually no offensive brain trust unless you count Ken Austin to call plays, which he can do. But my point is, I don't know. I didn't see it on my bingo card, to get back to my original point, that we would come out of September. And I always thought, as you guys did, that September was the tricky month because you're bringing in so many new players, even if they're elite and talented, getting them to perform cohesively and as a team and debugging the problem areas. It takes a game or 2 or 3 or 4. And it's not helped by going on the road to places that, as it turns out, they were top 8 teams. And Oklahoma getting some help, if you will, in that game, not to be a whiner. So, but it was not on my card in the most recent game, and this has been this horse is lying dead and not even moving now. It's so beaten that we would be completely clueless offensively, that there would be a game plan against what I think is going to be a slightly above average defense when the dust settles, Texas A&M. But the way they built that game plan and forced some issues on Jackson Arnold, which Hugh Freeze apparently continues to allow to make a lot of judgment decisions in worship of the RPO, which Hugh seems to have an idolatry for RPO. Yeah. I'd like to see, and I'll shut up because there's so many angles we can cover. I would like to see it, which is not ideal, but this isn't the NFL where you've got to be really sophisticated. I'd rather see Hugh essentially fake the RPO, let it appear that Jackson Arnold is reading the alignment, the pre-snap alignment, and he might change it, but the play is long since predetermined. Because I think if you're right if it's a coin flip, if you're right 50% of the time, what you call and what you run, and when you've got 50-50 ball getters like Coleman and a couple others, then I think the odds can only go up, and at least we would have control over running the ball at least 25, 30 times, because as the guys have said, it's just unacceptable, shocking, and a violation of Auburn's very DNA, for God's sake, as a program, to not pound the rock, to understand that this is deep South football and you've got to be physical at some point.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
I think that's that. I mean, one of the questions I had, and I posted on the message board, I think I posted 3 or 4 times now. Has Hugh Freeze forgotten he's coaching at Auburn? I mean,
seriously.
This isn't Texas Tech. I mean, and again, I'm not against throwing the ball, but I mean, it's it's almost like you've got Gus Malzahn, but upside down backwards.
And you know what else, Ronnie? It's everybody I know that, and I don't include myself, that really knows the nuances of offensive line performance says that so far, if you judge all the games, and until last Saturday, and there's really not much to score there, almost everything was bad. Almost everything was bad offensively. But the first 4 games, Auburn's run blocking by this O-line has been the strength. Yeah, they've had moments when you're playing Ball State, you could put the second stringers out there and pass pro would look pretty good, just outmanning them. But you're going away from your offensive line strength. You should, and it's fine if you want to make sure that you get at least 15 or 20 targets to your 3 best receivers. To me, Simmons, especially with Fields out, Simmons, Coleman, Singleton, give them their targets, but you can still lean on the strength of your O-line, which is pounding the rock. And I think they like run blocking if you get them fired up. That, to me, has got to be the game plan going against Georgia. We're going to play to our defense. We're going to challenge. We'll play a lot of 2 tight end. We'll get some tempo going. Then we're going to challenge our guys. If you want to beat Georgia in a night environment and have one hell of a Saturday night, October 11th, going into the wee hours, and I'd hang that reward in front of them, then we're going to do it old school Auburn way. Sure. And it will set up those 20% of the total plays, deep shots to guys like Coleman, that I think have a pretty good chance to hit big, because nobody's covered the guy yet.
Yeah, and you're not. The other thing, Rob, you mentioned earlier, keeping the roster together, making the receivers happy. This isn't making the receivers happy either.
No,
I mean, you've got to run the ball in order to open up the pass game. And so, I just the Freeze came out after the Oklahoma game and said we weren't committed to the run. We're going to fix that. We're going to do it this week, and it was worse. It was worse than ever. And I think Freeze deserves a lot of credit for rebuilding the program from a roster standpoint, managing NIL, and on and on. But at some point, you have to win games. And, I just think that if you come out and you don't play well against Georgia, let me preface this by saying I think Auburn has every intention of giving him at least 4 years. I don't think there's any question about that. But I do. Really? But
wow. I'm not so sure about that.
Well, I've been around.
You got better sources than I do,
I've been around long enough to see that even if that's the intention, that's not necessarily what they're going to be the case. I mean, if things get ugly, look, I remember Philip Marshall and I talking before the Vandy game against this is in 2012 with Chiswick, and we're talking before the Vandy game, and Philip said, there's just no way he's going to get fired. And I said, well, if he loses this game, he will. And it was so bad at Vandy. I remember Philip calling me after the game. He's like, there's no way he can make it. And, it's going to get to a point, if it collapses down the stretch, I don't think he can survive a losing season. I don't think he can survive 6-6. And I'm not sure he can 7-5 getting blown out at home by Alabama and Georgia. I'm not sure he can survive that either.
I don't either, but it's expensive if you do fire him. It's going to cost you a fortune. But look at Georgia. Y'all read Seth Emerson's comments in The Athletic after the Georgia-Alabama game this past weekend. Seth Emerson wrote, Georgia is not as good as it once was and probably never will be as good as the halcyon days of 21-22. And Georgia, as far as the defense and all goes, they're way down there. Georgia's lost 4 of their last 7 games against Power 4 competition. There's a lot of goofy stuff happening right now. And Doug, back to the thing with Freeze, how much more money are you going to have to extract from your boosters at Auburn and keep going into the slush fund, the general fund, to pay coaches not to coach? I know there's a group out there that wants Jimbo Fisher to be the next coach if they make a change. Let's don't have any more soap opera, God bless America drama at Auburn. Let's bring, and I like Jimbo, but I mean, Auburn's got to get somebody. You mentioned John Sumrall. Dave Bartu talks about these hot coaches. Rhett Lashley's making less than $3 million at SMU. Arkansas is going to make a run on him. But if Petrino goes 7-0 and wins out, Ronnie and Doug and Connor, Dudley Dawson said this morning, he's going to get that job, and they're going to start riding motorcycles out to bring the team on the field every game.
I'm hoping.
Go ahead, Carson. Sorry. I'll go.
No. So if I agree with what everyone said. That I don't think that they'll fire Freeze after a Georgia loss. I don't. I think because we all know Georgia's very good, very tough team. I think they just had a bad week against Bama. I think Kalen DeBoer has their number. It's their second straight year where they've kind of dominated the first half offensively, but Georgia's still a very good football team, obviously a contender in the playoff. But I think questions will arise if they lose to Mizzou and or Kentucky. And I think that's where it's kind of like the Harsin situation almost in that aspect, that one bad loss. I remember I think my freshman year in 2022, it was that Mizzou game, that missed field goal, that like 18-yard missed chip shot that Mizzou kicker had, basically saved him his job for about 3 more games, and then he eventually got fired. But it kind of gets to that feeling where it's just slowly crumbling around him. And I think they kind of have to start looking at, like you said, Rhett Lashley. I think he'd be a perfect fit at Auburn. He was the offensive coordinator here.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of have to start doing their due diligence about worst case scenarios.
You know what? I didn't say this clearly, explicitly enough earlier, but the programs, which I guess number 7 or 8 now with coaching openings in the middle of the season, UCLA, Arkansas,
Virginia Tech,
it's going to, with all due respect to love for our producer, it's hard to imagine that number Florida won't be added to that number soon unless things turn around in a hurry. And I don't wish that on Billy. I like Napier a lot. But he's got to live with himself being hard-headed about not going out and hiring a bleeding edge offensive coordinator. The same may be true of Hugh Freeze. These coaches that get so in love with being the brain trust, having that Waffle House plastic laminated play sheet in front of them. I don't know why that said. You know what's a thrill to me?
Winning.
Ron, Carson. You know what's a thrill to me is keeping my damn job when they're paying you $7 or $8 million a year. That's a thrill to me.
Yes.
I mean, for God's sake, not to mention the joy of winning a lot of games and feeling like you're on top of the world. But the point I'm wanting to get in front of us is the easy, like a friend of mine said, you ever been in a bar fight? You have to go back quite a ways in Dallas County that I can say that. And not that I'm proud of it, but the lesson learned there was be careful jumping in a pool game with people country boys you don't know. Because if you win, they're not
bricklayers.
And but one of them said, "I'm going to whip your ass." And my buddy, who's tougher than me, said, "Well, you got the easy part out of the way, talking about it." And I said, "This is not going to end well." But the easy part, football fans, not just Auburn, any fans, the easy part is to build this dossier that says, clearly the equal sign is we got to fire a coach mid-season. Yeah. But almost none of them are held to the fire to do the hard part, which is tell me who you're going to hire, brother. Because if that answer is not close to a slam dunk, or at least a good bet, if we're putting Vegas in the mix here, that there's a body of work that all points to they're going to fit our culture. They win everywhere they go. They understand the Deep South. And that was my worry about Kalen DeBoer, that he would come to Tuscaloosa and he wouldn't be comfortable screaming at his players like Saban. He feels like he's learning to scream at his players and do the things. He's adapting to his credit. And isn't it funny what a difference a month makes? You had the entire Crimson Nation that I heard ready to fire their coach yesterday. And they're sitting on top of they always had talent. It just didn't look like it on one single Saturday. And so there is I don't believe this. I'm not saying I expect it, but there is what in logic we call a possible world. There's a possible world in which Hugh Freeze looks materially different in 3 weeks after Georgia and Mizzou than he does right now. And this is not the most dominant Georgia team. Of course, on October 11th, Georgia will start looking dominant. Yeah. You know how that goes in the Jabba doctrine, just Auburn being Auburn. But make sure to me, there are almost no can't miss coaches that the fact that they're available to you and you hear that from their agent, it's not a leveraging you to get a pay raise and a contract extension for their client. You got to watch Sexton on that front. But if you're thinking about firing your coach and it looks like it's headed that way, and it might be nice to give him one more year to retain your roster, then it better be, I'll use one example. You better have gotten whispered reliably that Lane Kiffin will come if you offer him. And, some of you might not like Lane Kiffin, but, man, he has changed the baseline. You agree, Rob, about what's expected at Ole Miss? And now, wouldn't you know, he appears to have found mental and spiritual health, and I take him at his word on that from the documentary. Why wouldn't I? Until he proves that the demons are not exercised. You were going to say, right?
Yeah, I think that even though you may have a whisper, "Hey, I'm coming," that happened 3 years ago with Kiffin, and before that, it happened in 2012, early 2013 with Jimbo Fisher. I mean, Jimbo told him he was coming, and then backed out, and frankly, wouldn't call him back. I could tell you that whole story, but I won't tell it on the air. But that's not a slam dunk either. And Jimbo interviewed at West Virginia last year. It did not go well. And so look, there are guys out there that you can go get. You got Rhett Lashley, who I think would take the job. I'm not sure Rhett would take Arkansas, even though that's where he's from. That's a hard job. But you've got guys out there that, I was making my list here. You've got Sumrall, you've got John Gruden, I think, who actually I got to return a phone call about that earlier, a little bit when we get off the air. But I think there are guys out there who would take the job. Now, can Gruden recruit in college? I don't know. I'm not sure we're there yet. I want to kind of jump around. I made some notes.
Sure.
I think the Napier situation is more comparable to Freeze than Harsin. Carson, I don't think Harsin was ever going to make it. There were just too much off the field. There was too much lack of booster support. Freeze doesn't have that. Freeze got some boosters. He think he's lazy. There's a reason that golf store was leaked over the summer, and that was in case that we end up where we are now. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned Georgia, back in the day, 5 years ago, Georgia had 8, they were 8 deep on the defensive line. Now they got 5 guys now. They don't have 8 or 10 guys. And so there are opportunities.
Mizzou bought one of
There you
their
go.
guys.
I mean, and look, Missouri's done a great job with facilities. They've done a great job with NIL. They're committed. The whole conference is committed, and Auburn is committed. It's just a matter of, you got to put it together. Auburn has players. That's one thing that has the difference in now and the last 4 years is that Auburn has better players, or as good of players as almost everybody they play.
Yeah, and the roster is number 11 in the country. Doug, you're talking about you better know damn well who you're going to get if you make a coaching change. It's just like I listened to a guy named Phil Correa, started the Pioneer Fund, the mutual fund. It's like 100 years old. He said one time, we never make a move in the portfolio, sell a stock position unless we have a better one to buy. Now, we can, but you're not going to make money, sitting in cash. So you think you can get him? Rhett Lashley, I know this much. I know one of, Auburn. Yeah, there you go, Brian. But I have a friend, I worked with this guy. He played at Arkansas. He played with Rhett. And Rhett's parents live up there, on the Pinnacle golf course. And I don't think he goes back there. And I know someone from Mountain Brook that I talked to, one of my son's fraternity brothers, who works in that business with players and was working at SMU in the last couple of years, doing some work with them. They're paying Rhett less than $3 million a year. But if you've ever been to Dallas and Highland Park, he raised $162 million in about a week.
Yep.
There's so much money in Texas, but it doesn't win championships. Rhett knows what Auburn's culture is. His twins were born at East Alabama Medical Center. He knows how to recruit. He's kind of that dash rip rock, good-looking guy, just got charisma. He's got everything you want. But
is he more complete as a coach than
that's
Gus?
what
I think what I struggle with, and I would put him in I need to know more, and I may not have the luxury of knowing more when a hire has to be made, to be fair. But I probably am guilty. I'm confessing this of Rhett is guilty by association of being such a tight protege of Gus Malzahn. And that's probably not fair to Rhett because he's shown.
Well, Rhett has shown an ability to develop a pass game, which Gus never showed.
Yeah.
He's taken Gus's run game and put it with a pretty good pass game, and he's done a great job. I think he's got to be given credit. Look, SMU's always had money. It hadn't always worked. I think Rhett deserves now. I think they're really, really committed now, and you got NIL and all that helps. But I think Rhett deserves a lot of credit for the job he's done.
SMU was the forerunner of major NIL.
Yes, exactly.
If you follow me.
Well,
and Alabama was right behind them.
That'll light up.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
Ronnie, you're nailing it right. And another thing to say too, when it comes to, I talked to a friend deep inside Auburn that's been there a long time. He told me early on, he said, man, you better watch out. He's listening to Gus too much and talking to Gus too much. And Gus wasn't the worst person in the world, worst coach, whatever, but you better not listen to Gus too much. I think that's kind of where we are. And Doug, you mentioned it. Rhett got thrown under the bus in 2016. Auburn reeled off 6 straight wins. Cam Petway out of Prattville. If Cam wouldn't have stayed out of trouble in 2017 and backed up Carry-On and could have played late in the Alabama game, Carry-On's healthy. Auburn goes into the rematch and beats Georgia again, is the number 1 or 2 seed in the college football playoff, wins the whole thing in Atlanta. But I'm just, guys, y'all are right. And Connor, you're on campus. I said this last week. We got to talk to Carson. Cameron. Sorry. Carson, I'm looking at your name. And the lighting's better now. You look like you're no longer in the witness protection program. But
sorry about that. Yeah, I kind of got a little.
No, it looks great. But what I was going to say is that I told Tom Crean this. We have a generation of Auburn people who have grown up knowing basketball success, to borrow Seth Emerson's term, the halcyon days of Auburn basketball, and football. It's been a jump ball, 500 seasons and 5 and 6 win seasons. That's nothing to get excited about. Meanwhile, Ole Miss and Missouri are running laps around Auburn. What's the temperature of the student body down there?
I mean, just from watching the games, like at one of our friends' houses just over the weekend, it was more. Honestly, I mean, it wasn't as winnable as the Oklahoma game, but there was just more frustration than anything. It wasn't really that we lost; it was just how we lost. And I think the penalties, just not running the ball, play calling. I mean, just all this stuff that just should be simple, like the final possession on 3rd and 2. He didn't run the ball once. I feel like that's just a very simple run the ball, get the first down, extend the game in basketball terms. I think everyone's kind of getting a little fed up about it. They're excited when he came in here at 2023, got a good recruiting class, and then kind of gave him a year. Last year was hoping for improvement. That didn't happen. And then with this great transfer class that comes in, we have a great recruiting class as usual. We're kind of expecting immediate results. And I mean, we started off 3-0. We looked really good against Baylor. And then the offense has just looked abysmal against 2 top-tier SEC competitors who fans thought we could have a shot with this year.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I think the other thing is, we talked about earlier, holding the roster together and not firing the staff. You're not holding the roster together if it looks like this.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing. So, if you, and frankly, look, I think if there's a move made on Freeze for whatever reason, if he retires for health reasons or says he's had enough or they fire him or whatever, I think DJ Durkin has a really good shot to get the job.
Yeah.
And I say that for any number of reasons. The defense has done a good job. Auburn hasn't hired an assistant coach since Doug Barfield, but DJ Durkin has been a head coach. Yep. And DJ Durkin has a big stick, and his name is Will Muschamp, and Will, as all of you know, still holds a lot of sway at Auburn, knows all the boosters, knows all the money people, and he is very close to DJ, and DJ, runs a defense that looks a lot like Will's. But I think the thing that
hold on, right? Are you saying Boom would potentially come back as the DC?
I'm not saying that. Last time I talked to Will, he was.
You sure as hell imply.
Well, I hope he does.
Well, I'm just saying that. Look, I don't mean to imply that. What I mean is, whoever DJ doesn't know, Will does. I guess that's my point. I don't think Will.
It's a vote of confidence in
and people trust and like Will. And look, the last time I talked to Will, which was 3 weeks ago, it didn't sound like he had any intention of going back into coaching. He was hanging out at Syracuse with Fran Browne. If he wanted to coach, he'd have been coaching at Georgia at his alma mater, and he could have been doing whatever he wanted to do over there. I don't think he has any intention of getting back in. But again, that could certainly change. But I guess the point I wanted to make is, if your offense looks the way it looks right now, you're not holding the roster together anyway. So if the argument is, okay, well, let's not fire the coach because we got to hold the roster together, you're not selling playing time anymore. You've got to make excuses for the offensive play calling, and that's on the head coach. So if you're DJ and you say, okay, well, look, and here's the other thing: if you're going to make a coaching change, you almost have to do it before the end of the year. When I was at Florida in 2004.
There's only one portal gift.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And when we got fired at Florida in 2004, it was, shocking because very, very few people got fired in the middle of the season. Now, if you're going to make a change, you almost have to do it in the middle of the season to kind of get your ducks in a row and make a change, get ready for the early signing period. So everything is condensed, which is good for agents too, because your window for changing jobs has condensed, dramatically. And
one I wanted to ask, this is pivoting a little. I hope y'all don't mind. I put a question to Carson. Carson, I'm going to guess that you're in I don't know if it's called Gen Y these days or Gen.
I think it's Gen Z. Yeah.
Z. It doesn't matter a great. We're in the ballpark. But I wanted you, and this is unfair because no one individual can speak for their entire generation, for God's sake, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The rest of your 3 co-hosts here, Carson, are close enough as contemporaries. I don't mean to drag you young fellas down with me, but to wonder about the future financially and in terms of brand loyalty and, filling up stadiums. What is the below the like millennials and younger? What do they want from their college football experience? Are they the kind, enough of them, that they look forward to trudging all the way to their alma mater or their favorite team's campus, be it Auburn, Alabama, or wherever, and spending not a small amount of money on getting there? And I don't mean, season tickets, just would your generation, do you think, if you put a good product out there, will they make 2 or 3 games a year at least to support the program? And just expound
So
on
I
it any
think
way you
for
wish.
Auburn, absolutely. One of the best games that I went to in my lifetime, because I've been to the Rose Bowl, I went to the Ohio State-Washington Rose Bowl, I went to Wisconsin primetime game against Nebraska when they were top 10 in the country at the time. One of the probably the best atmosphere, or second best, was Cadillac's first home game against A&M, and it truly it felt like a playoff game, even though both teams are 3-6. So I think that
I was there. It was
was
cold.
a little chilly.
It was
That was
cold
the only
that
bit
night.
downside about that. But just to answer your question, yeah, I think I think most people would come down for another game just because of how loyal. Seems like everyone that's from Alabama here, at least that I know of, one of their family members went to Auburn, and they still come down for every game. Their grandparents still come down for Auburn. So I don't see that trend stopping here. But if you look at other schools like UCLA, for example, they could get like 35,000 people in a 90,000 seat stadium. So I think
If they're lucky.
That's a big crowd. They're at 15,000 now with Nico and his brother there.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. I mean, so especially with conference realignment, like you got these UCLA's who has no business being in a conference with Oregon, Ohio State, or even Stanford. Like they're struggling to sell out too.
Oh,
They're I think it's for here, absolutely, but just everywhere else, like those struggling programs like Arkansas, you can definitely see a downward trend, I think.
well,
Yeah. I mean, it'll all play out, but just like we are probably going to bond less with players on the roster because it's transactional now, and that's not true of every player. Some of them really do grow to love whatever school they're at, and they stick around. But there's a reason George is not, because it's not Kirby's fault. It is nearly impossible to keep a low second or third string on your roster. They're going to get bought by somebody if they don't get playing time.
Yeah,
and they want to go play. And they want to go play. I mean, that's
right.
I'm of the opinion, and I still think that if you recruit the right kind of kid, and you recruit the kid that wants to be at your school and wants to get a degree, and he's interested in being there 3 or 4 years, that's the right kind of kid. If you fill your roster up with kids who've transferred 2 and 3 and 4 times, those kids aren't getting a degree. And frankly, you're not running a serious football program in the sense that you're not there for student athletes.
It's like Colorado.
Exactly. And it's Florida State last year, last year. I mean, that's what you fill your roster up with. And so you're going to be this. Of course, Auburn's like this anyway, but up and down. But I just think that if you recruit the right kind of kid and you build the right kind of culture in your locker room, it's just like it's always been. You could always bring in, the portal is kind of like JUCO kids used to be. You can bring in guys like that, but if you bring in too many of them, it rots your locker room.
It overhauls the culture.
Finish your thought, Carson. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just building off. I was just saying it completely overhauls a team's culture. It can overthrow. That's all.
Ron, you and Rob are the stars of this show who keep it running every week after week. But if spouses can avoid needing rescue on the roadside, right, Ron? Is everybody okay? I meant to ask you.
Yeah. I mean, I apologize for the noise. My daughter's in here. My oldest daughter's supposed to be watching the dogs, and she's in here slamming doors instead.
No, I was talking about when your wife needed road rescue recently. But back to my point, the starving masses of Auburn fans, starving for good news. That is, I'm here to help, and y'all probably saw this. Stephen Pearl's first big win. Keyshawn Hall, who's a stud basketball player, and Tahad Pettiford announced they're not entertaining the transfer portal, and they're returning to play for Stephen Pearl. And I thought they would, because I'm sure Auburn, did whatever was required on NIL. So the decision was, as long as you otherwise like playing at Auburn this coming year and you like Stephen Pearl, then, we're going to match NIL. So that's great news for Pearl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, Stephen's been deeply, deeply involved in the program, and it was very clear he was going to take over anyway. He's been the lead recruiter on almost all these kids, regardless. And so they know him. They had an idea of what's coming. Bruce it's not like Bruce isn't going to be around. Now, you're not playing for him. But Stephen he's got deep relationships with all these guys. He's recruited them. He's been involved in NIL. So it doesn't surprise me that you're not seeing a lot of roster turnover.
Yeah. And the Bruce Pearl, I remember I have some good friends that lived across the fence from him in Knoxville for the 6 years he was there. And his son, Mikey, kind of grew up at their house. Y'all are dead on about Stephen. I mean, he's taken over. You can say, well, it didn't work when, Ray Meyer at DePaul stepped down. Joey Meyer took over. It didn't work with Gene Bartow and Joey Bartow. I think this is a lot. Yeah, Bob. I think it's just completely different, the dynamic with Stephen, because neither one of those guys was like Bruce Pearl. I mean, he's unique. But I'm going to throw something out there for y'all too, because I'm looking at Auburn. I said the same thing. I called Bill Cameron's show yesterday with him and Dan Peck, and I just said, DJ Durkin, let's get this out there in the open. Why people talked about what the tragedy at Maryland, he was cleared of that. And I know one thing too. I talked to a huge booster for Auburn a couple of years ago, and he said, Will Muschamp called me when Brian Harsin was here. Harsin was there at the time. And he said, we used to see Auburn's coaches coming in and out of every kid's house we recruited, every high school coming or going. It'd be us or them. He goes, what happened to them? That's how bad it got. And I will say this about Will Muschamp. He's done 3 tours of duty at Auburn. He's got nieces, nephews that have been to Auburn. He loves Auburn. And the DJ Durkin thing.
And so does Caroline, his wife, or Carol.
Okay. Yeah. And DJ can flat out coach. And I think Doug,
the relationship guy too.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so huge. And so it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But look at Georgia now. 57th nationally in offense, 59th in defense. Y'all both talked about the numbers. The second and third team guy, well, by God, he's starting at Indiana, or he's at SMU, or he's at Oklahoma. He's not sticking around. That's just where we are.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it is what it is. I am very interested to see from a football standpoint how the rest of the season plays out. I think, the Georgia game has the potential to be the biggest of Hugh Freeze's career. I really do, because I just think that if it looks bad, it's going to get really, really negative, and it can get negative at all places. But I mean, Auburn fans, for good reason, are frustrated. And this is Hugh Freeze's 3rd year. And it is going to get really, really ugly if it's an ugly loss.
Yeah.
In my newsletter yesterday, I'm sure Rob read it in all of his spare time. When he's moving investment markets and trying to run 5 different podcast shows, but and keeping his boss Audrey happy. But I use the metaphor, which everyone's long since heard, of the boiling frog. The idea being, which science says it's not accurate, but work with me, stay with me. If you throw a frog in a boiling pot of water, Carson, it will immediately leap out, instinctively, reflexively leap out and save its life. But if you put the same frog in cold, tepid water and very gradually raise the temperature to boiling, the frog will just feel so comfortable until he meets his demise, death by boiling. And so if you look at, I'm going to use the interesting case of Mario Cristobal. I'm not alone in saying a couple of years ago, he is not who Miami fans hoped he was. He keeps blowing games. He can't win the big one, blah, blah, blah. And, a lot can happen. He could turn south in a hurry this year, That's been Miami in recent history. But Miami sure looks like a team you don't want to play. They got some dogs on both in the trenches.
Yeah.
And so, to their credit, Miami decided, all right, we're in a pot of water here, but I don't think it's boiling. I think we got the right guy. We're going to wait and see. If it starts to feel a little warmer in here, we might leap out of this pot. Y'all with me on the metaphor?
Yeah, I love
this.
So
that's the hard part. That's the hard part. We are all frogs at the end of the day. And I'm not for trying to prophesy that Auburn is going to face TCU in a bowl game, but I would take any bowl game after last Saturday. I would take any damn bowl game. So it's going to be interesting. This Hugh Freeze, with all the heat he's feeling, sticking with the metaphor, he is feeling some heat right now. If he's got any competitive fire left in him, I'm asking you, Hugh Freeze, then it needs to be shown in this next game. I'm not saying beat Kentucky or beat Vandy or even Mizzou. Those are nice wins. I'm talking about stopping the bleeding in the Auburn-Georgia series. The last time Auburn won that was that blowout game in 2017 in Jordan-Hare. So, we are all frogs sitting in water right now, and we got to make careful decisions about, is the water getting hotter, or do we practice patience and see if this thing turns around?
I absolutely.
You mentioned Cristobal. You mentioned Cristobal. Another guy that's a little bit similar to Cristobal is James Franklin. I mean, he can't seem to get out of his own way in big games, but he wins 10 games every year.
Yeah.
He wins 10 games every year, and I think at this point, Auburn fans would love to have that. I mean,
you know what he is? I think Cristobal this is not a great, the analogy limps, all of them do, but I think that he is, in a way, he could be kind of Gene Chizik. All that Penn State needs to do is win the QB lottery, and they got the money to do it. Go buy yourself an elite generational quarterback any given year, and they'll have a supporting cast where Penn State can pull off a magical year. And if he ever gets that win in his sails, then I think Franklin would continue to win big thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he's done a good job. I mean, I think he gets beat up a little bit, and look, rightfully so. He can't. He seems to piss down his leg in big games. But that being said, he's done an overall good job, especially considering. Look, I mean, Bill O'Brien came in, stayed 2 years, and then he took over after that. But I mean, it's not like he walked into a great situation after the child molestation scandal at Penn State.
Yeah, and you know what? You look at Franklin's record at Penn State, 12 years. He's like 4-21 against AP top 10 teams and 102-22 against everybody else. I took some notes on something I read in The Athletic today. If you take away his first 2 years when they were coming off the sanctions after the Sandusky nightmare at Penn State and the showers and all, he's 4-18 against the top 10, 86-13 against everyone else. He wins the games he's supposed to win and nothing more. But Auburn, I can remember when Tommy Tuberville was here, how many big games that he won. I mean, Bill Snyder, the Lazarus of Kansas State, 5-38 against the top 10. I think Frank Beamer, Virginia Tech, 8-33 against the top 10. Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, 12-29. But people don't expect them to win.
They're not Auburn, though.
Yeah, they're not Auburn or LSU. And look at the LSU fans; they're about to jump off the ledge because I didn't buy the Kool-Aid this summer. I was like, after 3 or 4 games into the season, I said, if LSU had an offense, we'd have seen it by now. It's just, you are who you are.
I picked Ole Miss. Duff was mad at me.
Yeah, and I had Ole Miss to win all week, and damn it, Friday, I said, I'm changing my mind because I think LSU's secondary is going to get a pick late. And my wife Audrey said, in school, don't ever forget your first choice is almost always right. And I said, I made that pick, and I still think Ole Miss is going to win. I'm just saying, guys, we're about out of time. Carson, you're good. You know your stuff. You going to be a lawyer or you want to be a writer?
Probably a writer. That's the goal right now. Probably not a lawyer at this. Yeah.
Well, you got your facts.
Carson,
I'll just say that you're good.
As I like to say, writing is thinking, and I just on this show alone, you're a good thinker, a crisp crisp thinker and are very articulate. You're going to go far, Carson.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
definitely think you. And you're working with this guy and Jason
Yes.
Caldwell and Nathan King and Philip Marshall and Christian Clemente. I mean, you got really
And you
good-
gave it away. That you say you were from New York? No, Boston, right?
No, New York,
Okay.
Syracuse.
And New York. If you didn't
Oh,
think it
wow.
was cold, you didn't think it was cold that night. Cadillac coached Auburn to a win over the Aggies. I can tell you're from New York. It was cold in Jordan-Hare.
No
He said
lake
it was
effect
chilly.
snow here, huh?
Rob, he said it was
No.
chilly. We
Yes,
all had
chilly.
toboggans on.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was wearing some pants and a sweatshirt, but not
You're
like a
conditioned.
winter jacket, hat, gloves, nothing like that.
Good
Yeah.
for you.
And
Pretty damn cold to me. Pretty damn cold to me. I was there. I was wearing a beanie and everything else.
I'll never forget my sweet daughter Hannah, who's married 4 months ago. We were sitting. She bugged me to go to that game, and I had this. We sat on the front row in the south end zone, and Whitney and she had this poster made. It was a picture of Cadillac when he scored that opening series touchdown against Alabama in 2003, and the ESPN camera guy thought she was cute, and I don't disagree. And they came over and said, "All right, hold on a minute. We're going to come over here at the commercial break." And so when they came over and zoomed in on Hannah, and I tried to stay out of frame, Rob, our phones, you wouldn't believe it, instantaneously our phones are blowing up. And so there must be a 3-second lag, right? People see it on their TV before you know it happened. And that was a real education for me about how quickly imagery passes through TVs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's NIL. And what these kids need to realize is you go around 3 or 4 times and you screw over the wealthy people that run the state of Alabama or Georgia or Mississippi on some NIL deal. You walk, they're the wrong people to piss off. You're going to come back in this state, try to get a job and network. Because we all know the guys that played 4 or 5 years at Auburn, scout team. It doesn't matter. You come back in that Letterman's Club, you're in the dome, that protective dome, man, they're called ring knockers. Ask Ellis Johnson about the Citadel. It doesn't matter. If the people that you go through the most hell with, that you survive it with, hell, I mean, those are tough people. Speaking of Syracuse, Fran Browne, that guy's another.
He's an up-and-comer.
He's a hell of a coach and recruiter. And look, I mean, you know what? Everything's on the table. Great discussion. We run out of time. We need to put another quarter in the horse out in front of the store so it'll ride some more. But awesome stuff, Carson. I mean, and Ronnie, awesome. Auburn Undercover people, go to that website. It's the 4th busiest in America. Who are the top 3 ahead of Auburn, Ronnie?
I believe Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia. So we're considering the seasons that those schools have had the last few years and the seasons that Auburn has had, we feel pretty good about it.
Hey, Rod, I'll make one easy forecast. Everything fans are thinking will happen now, based on interpreting the events of last Saturday, will not hold up. Yeah. It's that kind of parity we've got in the SEC. I can't tell you what will be shocking. I would point out that Vanderbilt goes to Tuscaloosa Saturday. I think Alabama takes care of business. But we're not done with the surprises.
Yeah, forget about it.
We probably can't be that lucky.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Take the heat off, right?
Hey, for executive producer Brendan Martin, the best in the business, thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for watching. Come to this website. Come to our channel, Sidelines. We'll see you tonight and in the morning all the time. Take care.
See you guys.
See ya.
You guys.